Hello, everybody. I decided I'd go over all the changes of the Vintage Cube and talk about the new cards and how they might slot into things. Starting with Archangel Elspeth. Just a pretty solid Planeswalker. Nothing too special, but it's like one of those cards that helps you get the late game reach when you're playing white. Make sure that you can finish them off. Losing Hero of Bladehold. Hero's a nice card. I know that some people will be sad to lose that one, but it is sort of replaceable, just like 4 mana effect. They both are going to be doing similar things in that they snowball if they stay in play. Oh, this card's pretty cool. I got this in a draft yesterday. I think this is a nice inclusion. Just another big body for white. Gives you lots of value. Not much to say there, except for it's a pretty high pick, probably. I can't imagine white players passing this one very frequently. Scapeshift leaving. Happy to see that one go. I never drafted that archetype. I felt like too many things needed to go right. Guide of Souls coming in. I thought that was already in. Easy inclusion. Pretty powerful effect. Just rewards you for doing the things that white likes to do. Cutting Benevolent Bodyguard, that's fine. Mostly only for Luris anyway, so didn't see a lot of play as far as the decks that I was building. Bringing in Jacked Rabbit. I don't know if I've seen this one. So we got a 2-mana 1/2. And if we pay 7, we get to draw a card. And it's making a lot of 1/1s. So what's the rate on this, really? 2-mana 1/2, 3 mana, and you get 2/3 in power? I don't know how good this is. I wouldn't expect it to be, like, great. It combines a reasonable rate and flexibility into a great standalone card. Well, great has been called. I'm going to go ahead and say filler. Replacing the White Orchid Phantom, another unexciting card, so it'll be interesting. I could see this card being like kind of nice if you have Intrepid Adversary or something like that. Just a nice way to spend all of your mana. But if you're spending 2 or 3 mana, you're not really getting your card's worth out of it, so I'm skeptical of how good this is actually. Kitsa seems really nice. Just the best looter that we've seen in a long time. Definitely good for those reanimator decks, and then it has combo potential where you're copying all kinds of things. You can copy your second spell because it has prowess. So yeah, should be good for copying lightning bolts or brainstorms pretty easily, and then vigilance, prowess, and looting, just kind of a slam dunk. I would probably be happy to pick one pack one this out of a average pack. This card seems really nice. And Chart a Course, I mean, it's just a strict upgrade in my opinion. So Vendilion Click's coming back. Just a solid blue card. Good with the flash plans where you're passing each turn and then having a few options to spend your mana based on what your opponent does. You can like lock them out with Caracas sometimes. Although the days where that worked well are probably over. The cards that your opponent can top deck are better these days. Serum Vision's going. Yeah, that's fine. Mediocre cantrip. Events are coming back in. Speaking of Caracas, another nice card for that. Just looks like they're adding more flash blue stuff, so blue's theme is definitely pass with mana open, kind of nice. Losing Treasure Cruise is sort of sad. I know that Terabad, one of the better cube players that I know, was complaining about the lack of card draw in the cube, so losing one of the draw 3s is unfortunate for players who like to grind out their value. Blood Chief's Thirst coming in does not impress me. I don't like this card very much. It's a sorcery. It's conditional. if you want to actually like kill something that matters, it costs 4 mana, and there's just so many ways to kill something for 4 mana that's better. I'd prefer something like Vendetta if we were going to go back to 1 black mana to kill something. Or the new card that's just like 2 mana sorcery, kill any creature. I'd much rather have that. So Bloodchief's Thirst is like pretty low on my pick order. I would play it, when it wheels, but I'm not going to reach for it. Infernal Grasp Leaving is sad. This card's really nice. I take this card super highly. Planeswalkers just don't matter as much as they used to because creatures have gotten so much better. Darkstar Augur. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library and put that into your hand. Oh, it's a Dark Confidant. And we're losing Night's Whisper. That seems like an upgrade. You can get 2 of them because it has Offspring. I don't know how high of a pick this is because the decks that are going to want it, you're not going to be wanting to have a super high curve. And the main benefit of the Dark Confidant is it's 2 mana, so you can play it with Lurrus, and then your whole deck is already designed for it to be really good. So I imagine this card to be good when it's good, but also for it not to be a very high pick, just because if it's, middle of pack 2 and you find it and you're in black, you won't necessarily want it for all of your decks, just based on what your curve looks like. So Dark Petition leaving. Dark Petition's kind of like one of those linchpin cards if you're trying to make Tendrils of Agony, Cabal Ritual type things work. But in my opinion, those strategies are harder to put together than some of the more overt combos. So if you have all of the card selection required to make Dark Petition Tendrils work, oftentimes you could just be doing something better, like Shieldred Wheel. So I'm not sad to see that go, even though it's kind of a nice card. Hazel's Brewmaster, what does this do? Enters or attacks, exile a card, and create a food token, and foods have all the activated abilities. Ooh, so this probably has some combo potential. Oh, there's a Devoted Druid combo with it. That's kind of cool. Just get all the mana in the world. So that's a neat addition. I'll have to try to pull that off. I can't expect this card to be that high of a pick because it's 4 mana for a 3/4, but it's not like an embarrassing body. So if you're playing a low curve deck, I could see this being okay. The more I think about it, though, it's just going to be really hard for it to consistently do anything. So I imagine that this is going to actually float pretty late, which means that its function will likely just be as an easy access combo piece for Devoted Druid, which will be a higher pick, and then you wheel the Brewmaster. Because I can't imagine people are going to be taking this early and trying to make it work. Sorin seems fine. Nice defensive body, good at blocking Ragavan and that sort of thing. I can't imagine that the extortability matters too much, because if you have mana and spells, you're usually doing different, more powerful things in Vintage Cube. But the flip side, it doesn't show it here, but on the flip side, it does do some pretty powerful things. You can subtract 1 loyalty, and it does damage equal to the amount of life you gained this turn, so if you combine this with any sort of life gain effect, you can fireball your opponent pretty well. I'm not exactly sure what big life gain swings there are, but for 2 mana, you're not really doing that bad anyway on rate, so I could see this card being okay. I wouldn't take it very highly, but again, it's a 2 mana card, so I also wouldn't take it very low. Replacing Prismatic Omen. Prismatic Omen is just another Scapeshift card. Easy loss. Valky's kind of nice. I'm sad to see that go. Vampire Hexmage. I guess there are more Dark Depths combos with Shifting Woodlands, so maybe bringing back Vampire Hexmage gives you... Oh yeah, there's also Sowing Micah Spawn and White of the Reliquary. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Just make Dark Depths work a little bit better. I also think that The card is just hard to cast, and because only one deck really wants it, it's always going to go late. And also, it's like one of the worst Dark Depths enablers because it's so easy to kill. And back in the day, like, Planeswalkers used to be the premier threat, so it was like fine to play, but now that's not the case anymore. Like, your opponent just might not have any Planeswalkers in their deck. So I think it's mostly a sideboard card, if that. Like, I guess if your opponent has Minx and Boo into Teferi or something, you'd probably bring it in. Losing Valky's kind of sad. I like this card. My opponent's brought it to light several times as Tybalt. So, Emberheart Challenger. When it becomes the target of a spell or ability for this first time, exile the top card and you may play that card. Interesting. Well, I guess it's just a 2-mana 2/2 haste with prowess, because you're not really ever going to be targeting it. I can't think of any effects that... I mean, there's like equipment, and maybe things like Minkskin Boo, but yeah, you're not going to be targeting it very much. So it's basically just a 2-mana 2/2 prowess haste, which I think is actually kind of fine. Replacing Harsh Mentor, this card is bad, so this is just a really nice upgrade. Yeah, I think most decks that are going to want this are just like the low-to-the-ground red decks. It pairs nicely with stuff like Robber of the Rich. You're just always dumping your hand and getting in and then try to burn them out later. Galvanic Discharge coming in over Arc Trail. Not much to say there. I like Arc Trail better, but just very similar effects. Not a super high pick, but also cheap removal, so it's okay to take it high. Charma out, Glorybringer in. I like that. I like that a lot. Charma just rarely is ever going to cost less, and most opponents aren't going to have lands that you care to destroy for that price. Not like a terrible card, but Glorybringer is just really nice. Haste and flying ends games fast. It's removal. We like that. Flare of Duplication out. Lavamancer in. Not much to say there. Both these cards are kind of medium. Lavamancer being a cheap creature probably is just better. I know that the red deck wins gamers like Zax. He's going to appreciate Lavamancer returning. Ooh, and another 1-drop for him. Whenever you attack with one or more lizards, Hired Claw deals 1 damage to target opponent, and then you can pay 2 to put a +1/+1 counter on it if they lost life. Oh, that's kind of nice. That's just, you play it on turn 1, and then you just load up on it while you maintain cards in hand and force your opponent to deal with your 1-drop before you play your more important threats like Lelia, Gut, that kind of thing. This card's nice. And yeah, we don't need any Gruul Turfs in the cube. That wasn't going in many of my decks. Yeah, I would be happy to pick this card relatively highly and just move into red. Seems like a good... It's like the old Goblin Guide story, you know, where you see a Goblin Guide in the middle of the pack and you can be like, oh shoot, Mono Red's open. For the Mono Red gamers, they don't need a big signal. A Lightning Bolt, pick 4, Mono Red's open. Devoted Druid, combo card with the aforementioned black thing. I'm not sure exactly what other combos there are, if there's like a Vizier of Remedies, but other than that, it's just kind of a weak mana dork. It used to be stronger, but ramping just doesn't have the same oomph it used to, because creatures are powerful for cheaper these days. You just don't have to ramp out a 5-drop when your 3-drop is capable of winning also. So I can't imagine this being a very high pick. Perhaps the combination of this and the black card also being a low pick will make it so the combo comes together easily, because like survival's not a high pick either. So if you can figure out how to draft the deck and that combo winds up being strong enough, 3-card combo, I don't know, 3-card combo that can be facilitated by 1 card. So I could see that maybe being something that people pick up on, but you would want to learn how to draft that archetype so that you can get the most out of your picks. Because basically what you'd be doing is expecting to wheel the survival, the druid, and the other piece, or at least get them without having to reach too hard for them. And then all of your other picks can just be focusing on picking up the good filler for that deck. Other than that, it's just going to be a mid card that you don't actually have to pay too much attention to. Foundation Breaker is fine. Not super exciting, but, you know, destroying an artifact is nice. I don't know that it's an improvement over Reclamation Sage, but I also don't know that it's a big deal. Both cards are fine to take sort of high. I would probably take the Rec Sage higher than the Breaker. I expect this one to go kind of late. Arboreal Graves are out. Elves in. Neither of these cards is a very high pick or super exciting. Like I was saying before, when your threats at 3 mana do the same that threats used to at 5 mana, the value of having like elves is just diminished significantly. Keen-Eyed Curator. Here's a new card. 2 mana for a 3/3. And if it has Delirium... Oh, no. As long as there are 4 more card types among cards exiled, it gets +4/+4 in trample. Okay. This can be big. I don't think that this will be a very high pick because it costs green, but it's one of those cards that will find its way into the green player's deck that can cast it, because that's going to be the only player that's interested in it. And at that rate, it's nice if you can cast this. So... yeah, I wouldn't be reaching for it, and I wouldn't view it as much of a signal, but, you know, when you're green, you can expect to get this card, and it's going to be good. So Nissa is like a Lotus Cobra, and if you have a fetch land, you get to go find an elf or an elemental. This card's not going to be very good. You can probably expect to wheel it if your deck wants it. But it's also a solid card. You don't have to be embarrassed to put it in your deck. Here's the Savannah Lions everybody was talking about. Probably not a very high pick. If your deck is curving out like Paw Patch Recruit into Bristly Bill into Sentinel of the Lost City, though, that's pretty good curve. So gives you another Savannah Lions and that Hex Drinker redundancy sort of thing. Can't really think that the ability is going to matter too much, but, you know, when they kill it, if you're against a red deck, they burn it, you're going to get that counter on your other thing. Not a very high pick, but, you know, the green decks, it's like another card that the green decks will get, which is kind of nice because a lot of the time the green deck will have its best cards taken by other archetypes because they're so splashable, like a Seeker's Chariot, for example. So good cards that work only in the deck that can, like, cast a green 1-drop on turn 1 every time. That could be a nice addition to the cube. I never really played Pick Your Poison too much. I know some people are upset to see that one go, but I think it's fine to leave. Life from the Loam, basically only good with Strip Mine. Perfectly happy to see that go. Tough Cookie, I'm actually kind of high on. Just at 2 mana, you're getting a lot out of it. The ability to animate the food, you can just attack for so much damage out of nowhere, and if your deck is producing multiple artifacts, so you can maybe just spend 6 mana for 8 damage, it just generates so much power from one card for 2 mana. I like this card quite a bit. People don't take it very highly, so you usually can get it around the middle of the pack or after the wheel. Pretty solid addition. I'm happy to see that one back in the cube. Flame of Anor, instant speed divination, destroy target artifact, deal 5 damage. Seems nice. You get 2 if you have a wizard, so there will be definitely some times that you get to pull off all the value from this, but even at just face value, none of these modes are too bad. especially when you have the option. Again, it's not a card that is going to be a high pick or a signal that you should go into blue-red, but when you are blue-red, it's a nice reward. Voice of Resurgence, not much to say about that. Pretty mediocre card. This will go late almost every single draft. You don't have to reach for it if you want it. It will wheel. Risen Reef, another pretty mediocre card. In fact, I can't imagine that this Elementals archetype is good enough to even like really want this card, because like you have to draw it and then have it be the first one that you draw, because if it's the last Elemental you draw, it's just a 3-mana 1/1. There's just so many things that have to go right. This card is going to go last pick every single time, and I don't know why it got included. Somebody does something good with this, screenshot it and send it to me so I can eat my hat or whatever, but don't take this one if you want to win. Leovold, nice card. You know, pairs with all the wheel strategies. Cutting a wheel for it is something, but Sail into the West isn't like so good that it always has to say. Because it's hard to cast, it usually goes kind of late. Some people pick it pretty early. I wouldn't advise doing that unless you have a pretty clear plan about what you're doing, but it's definitely a card that if you can cast it, you're happy to cast it, even if your deck doesn't have wheels. Mana Confluence is a pretty good piece of mana fixing. Not a super high pick, but also not a low pick, and you don't have to feel bad. Like, if this is pack 2 or 3 and your deck needs the mana fixing, you can just take this first. It's not embarrassing, so I think that's a nice inclusion. Losing the bounce lands is nice. Nothing worse than playing a bounce land and getting wastelanded. Satya, I've played with this one a little bit. It's not a high pick, but again, it's one of those cards that when you draft the mana base that can cast it, it's a nice reward. Not every deck that can cast it wants it, but if you have any kind of ETB effect, it's going to be pretty good. Talon, it's not showing up, but I know what this does. It's a land that when it enters, you can phase something out. So I don't know exactly what deck is going to want this, but it's replacing Valakut, so the bar is pretty low. I guess if your deck is multicolor and slow, it'll have a little bit of application there. I don't really have much to say about this. Let's read the description. Maybe that'll give me some insight. It's an interesting land. As a land drop, it clears a blocker for turn and combos well with wrath effects when you have one nice creature you'd like to keep around. But the problem with that is, in decks that want to clear a blocker for a turn, you want your mana to cast your spells and not make your spells cost 1 more mana because it doesn't tap for the color that you need. So you'd have to have like really good mana fixing to want to play this in your aggro deck. That said, you know, if you've got like 6 red-white dual lands, go for it. 4 mana removal, countering attacker, blinking instant. Yeah. I imagine that just like slow controlling decks will kind of want this. It is nice with the Wrath. If your deck is playing Wrath, you can phase out your own creature in Wrath. So I think that that's probably the most likely application for the card, is if you're playing some kind of board sweeper deck, going late, trying to grind out value with planeswalkers, that kind of thing, where you're just going to have turns with extra mana up. And then having a card that lets you make decisions and have options is going to be valuable. Lava Spur Boots coming in over Relic, I guess, is kind of nice to have another way to trigger Nadu. Oh, it says right there. Yeah, you get it with Urza Saga. Kind of a mediocre card. Nobody's going to take that highly. That's like the story of a lot of these cards, is just adding in a ton of cards that you don't really want to reach for. Sort of an interesting update, but it's also cutting a lot of cards that you never reached for, so the bar for improvement is not very high. Well, there you have it. I hope that this was informative. Thanks for tuning in, and happy cubing.